All right, guys. So I noticed this morning when I released my initial reaction to the midterms last night that a lot of you were not as optimistic as I was in regards to the midterm election results last night. Now, here's the thing. That is okay. I understand why people are upset, why they are disappointed. And I think that a lot of people, including myself, just did a bad job of explaining exactly what to expect from the so-called red wave that I believe still happened. It just happened for certain candidates, and it didn't happen for other candidates for very obvious reasons. But here's the thing. What people got to understand is that regardless of what happens moving forward, the Republicans will be able to stifle Biden's agenda. Most likely, they're going to take the House, and there's a decent chance that they could actually win the Senate majority. Even in the best case scenario of the red wave, the Republicans would have only won like maybe 53 or 54 seats. They could end up with 51 or 52. Maybe. Okay? So, look, fundamentally, there is no difference between the best case scenario of the so-called red wave and what is happening right now. There is no legislative difference outside of maybe stopping the Democrats from getting rid of the filibuster. However, that is something that it would have to require Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema to change their minds, or for Democrats to achieve the best case scenario for them at this point, which is to win 51 seats in the Senate. Okay, and again, still at that point, you would have to have Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema decide to change their minds. So I'm just saying, it looks like we're going to be in the same situation that we were the last 2 years, in which Biden's agenda, for the most part, outside of extremely bipartisan legislation, it's going to be stifled. I don't think that changes. I don't think there's any fundamental difference between that and even the best case scenario under a red wave that we all wanted to happen, except that Republicans would have the ability to, one, prevent the Democrats from repealing the filibuster, period. And then two, they can advance their own legislation for Joe Biden to veto or to accept. They could also impeach Joe Biden, but I don't think that that would have happened or been successful even under the best red wave scenario. Again, I would love to see January 6th style hearings on Hunter Biden and other things as well too, that a lot of people in the base want to see. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily sure in this political climate that is advantageous for getting to the promised land, which is 2024, where we can take back the presidency, the House, and the Senate. Okay? So again, this is a work in progress. And until then, I remain optimistic, and I will stay optimistic because I see the light at the end of the tunnel. And one of the reasons why is because Kari Lake is surging big time in Arizona, to the point where I'm very confident that Kari Lake is going to pull it out once all the ballots are counting. As, again, she remains optimistic as well, too, at least on Twitter. She says remaining ballots, election day, and early drop-offs are breaking bigly for Kari Lake, just like we knew they would. And if we look at the current results, it's in a virtual tie here. Okay, as you guys remember, early on in this Arizona race, Hobbs was up big, and everybody was freaking out. But the early ballots that came in that were being counted were all Democrat. Now the ballots that are being counted for the most part are Republican. And essentially every time there's an update, Kari Lake is closing the lead. And I think she's going to take the lead and probably end up winning by a decent margin. I really do believe that's going to be the final outcome. I don't know that for sure, but I'm just saying it looks like that. And, you know, the betting market believes that Kari Lake has the best chance to win as well. Okay, so I'm very optimistic. I'm just like you guys. I don't know how in the hell did anybody go to the polls in Arizona and decide to vote for Katie Hobbs. I have no clue whatsoever. How can you vote for somebody that essentially campaigned in her basement? She refused to debate. She's shown that she is a weak leader. The people of Arizona should be ashamed of the fact this race is even close. But again, we really don't know how close it actually is because the final count hasn't come in yet. It could very well end up that once we have the final count in, Kari Lake could win by a decent margin. And we're sitting here like, okay, now it makes sense, right? All the votes are counted. Kari Lake won, and maybe the margin won't be as razor thin as it is now. I have no clue. But I'm just saying, I'm just like you guys. There's some races that happen that I'm just scratching my head, and we're going to talk more about one of the races that, again, really has me scratching my head. But I'm just saying, I'm very optimistic about what's going on here. And speaking of a fourth quarter comeback, we have Lauren Boebert, who is also making a fourth quarter comeback as she's in a virtual tie. I mean, we're talking about this race. We're talking the difference here being about 70 votes, okay, with her and her opponent, Adam Frisch, who the Democrats have spent a ton of money trying to get Lauren Boebert up out of Congress. And it looks like she may come back and win this race. We don't know, but she is closing the gap just like Kari Lake. So she may keep her seat, which is something I'm pretty sure a lot of people are happy to see. Now, again, when it comes to the House, I mean, GOP is predicted to regain control, which is good. It's not as good as people thought. A lot of people are now, considering saying, you know what, maybe the GOP needs a new leader of the House. Maybe they need to get rid of Kevin McCarthy, which I agree with. They definitely should. There's no reason why we should have performed this poorly, okay, considering the momentum that we had coming in. And Kevin McCarthy has to take some responsibility for that, which in my opinion means that he needs to lose leadership. And then obviously with the Senate, I explained to you guys, best case scenario here for the Republicans is that they pick up 51 or 52 seats. Alaska, I don't know why they're not counting Alaska. Alaska is going Republican, okay? It's just about whether or not it's going to be Kelly Toshiba or Lisa Murkowski. That's going to go Republican. So we got 49 there. Georgia runoff. Who knows in this race? I mean, this is a toss-up. Herschel Walker could end up winning that in the runoff. We don't know. Arizona, Blake Masters. If that race goes the same as Kari Lake in regards to him closing the lead at the end, he could potentially win. However, the funny part here and the sad part is that you have 2% of the vote going to Mark Victor, which, I mean, I think you can reasonably assume that without the Libertarian vote, all those votes would have went to Blake Masters and he would have had a better chance of closing the gap. So, I mean, Blake Masters might literally lose because of people voting for somebody that dropped out of the race and endorsed the Republican, which, again, is extremely silly. But, again, man, some of these people are voting off some crazy stuff, right? And in Nevada, we still have a Republican lead in Nevada with 77% of the vote in. So, again, you could see the Republicans tying the Senate. That's probably the most likely scenario if they pick up Alaska and they pick up Nevada. They lose Arizona, they lose Georgia. We're right back where we were, where the Senate is a tie. It's only a majority to Democrats because Kamala has the tiebreaker because Biden has the presidency. And then the House is controlled by the GOP. That's the situation we have. Again, in that situation, Biden's agenda is done. He can't do anything. So that being said, wow, speaking of races that really, really, really blow my mind, I want to talk a little bit more about this John Fetterman and Dr. Oz race, which, I mean, guys, I'm just like you. I watched that debate with Fetterman, and I don't know how anybody went out there and voted for this guy. I mean, there are just people in this country that just don't care. They don't care about the economy. They don't care that they voted for somebody that, I mean, is incoherent. He can't speak. Clearly, the man shouldn't be in Congress. I don't know if they just hate Republicans or maybe it is the abortion issue, which I hate to admit. But when I look at some of these exit polls here out of Pennsylvania, that's what it looks like. I mean, the top issue in Pennsylvania was abortion. 37% of people said that abortion was their number one issue. 78% of those were Democrats. 28% said inflation. 72% of those were Republicans. I don't know what to say. I mean, listen, I can admit when I'm wrong, okay? I still don't think that abortion is the main issue why there's no red wave. Okay, I think it has more to do with the fact that Dr. Oz is just not an inspiring candidate. He just was not a good candidate. But I definitely underestimated the role that abortion would play. But I'm a rational person. I did not believe that people would come out here and really vote on this issue as a single issue. I didn't believe it, considering the crime crisis, the border crisis, the economy, gas prices. I just didn't believe it. But I'm learning that when it comes to predicting how Democrats are going to vote, you can't think like a rational person, because the people that are voting on this are non-married women who made up 21% of the electorate, and 65% of them went to Democrats. Best believe most of these women voted probably based off of abortion, which is sad. I mean, it really is. We literally have thotties determining the outcome of elections. Again, I'm sorry if I didn't accurately, predict that women, young women would come out in droves to keep their right to abortion. But again, I'm a rational thinking person. I'm gonna come out here and vote on the economy. They must not care about gas prices. They must not care about the economy. I'm just saying, it blows my mind. It really does. But some of these insights here do kind of show you why Dr. Oz lost and why Fetterman won. I mean, look at this right here. Was your vote for U.S. Senator mainly for your candidate? 67% said yes. And out of those, 53% were Democrats. So 53% said, hey, I'm going to come out here and vote for my candidate, okay? Versus 28% saying they're voting against their opponent, which 55% of Republicans voted against Fetterman. They didn't vote for Oz. They voted against Fetterman. Which, again, it blows my mind that Democrats voted for Fetterman. They was like, oh, yeah, that guy, I want him in Congress, not because I hate Oz, but just because I like him. Mind blown, right? There are people in this country that think like this. Again, I don't understand it. In deciding how to vote for U.S. Senator, how important was it to you which party controls the Senate? 74%, very important. A majority of those were Democrats. Somewhat important was 17%, and that was basically a tie. So again, I think that what happened in Pennsylvania here, abortion definitely played a big role. I will admit that, because I think a lot of these people are voting to avoid a national abortion ban, which was a very, very, very silly thing for Lindsey Graham to come out and say. It was a silly thing for Herschel Walker to come out in support of. It was just a very silly thing for Republicans to come out here and say, after telling the country that, hey, Roe v. Wade is simply about states' rights. It's about making abortion a state's issue. Your state can decide what they want to do on this issue. Also, what you have here is, when did you finally decide for whom to vote in the U.S. Senate election? 72% said before October. Okay, so 55% of those people were Democrats. Early voting in Pennsylvania, I think, opens 5 weeks before Election Day. So a lot of these people already decided who they were voting for before the disaster John Fetterman debate with Dr. Oz. And that could explain why John Fetterman ended up winning. Oz was not running a good campaign. And a lot of these people probably decided they were going to vote for John Fetterman because they haven't really seen him like that. And they just went out and voted before they actually could get a chance to see him. So a lot of these people, again, they probably voted before they actually got a chance to see the condition that Fetterman was in, which again would explain why in the world did he get elected. So again, I think that, these exit polls here kind of tell a story that the GOP can use going forward, which I think mainly when we're talking about 2024, it has to be clear that the GOP is not in favor of a national ban. They can't do that. That gets the young thotties voting in droves, okay? But, I mean, when you're looking at this election, that just seems to be what the issue is, okay? Particularly in Pennsylvania. Now, some of these other states, again, we're not going to know till later. But that state right there, Pennsylvania, it seems like people had already decided before they had a good look at John Fetterman. And also, again, people were just voting based off of abortion. That combined with Dr. Oz not necessarily being liked by Republicans or anybody really, that is ultimately what sunk him. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.